I'm Etwin Sabarini, and I'm the Program Impact Manager for Climateworks Centre's Ocean Program based in Jakarta. I'm excited to be your host for today as we explore the opportunities from Indonesia's ocean for its economy and climate. The ocean is fundamental to Indonesia's economic growth and the livelihood of its citizens. With 75% of Indonesia's territory composed of marine areas and ocean-based activities valued at over 1.3 trillion US dollars, the health of Indonesia's ocean is vital to its prosperity and resilience. But the ocean holds other benefits too. It has the potential to mitigate climate change through healthy marine ecosystems that absorb emissions, offshore renewable energy that reduces dependence on fossil fuels, and low-emission shipping that minimize the carbon footprint for international trade. In this way, the ocean generates a double dividend, providing opportunities for economic growth and positive climate outcomes. The Indonesian government has recognized the value of integrating the ocean in its climate strategy by including it in its national determined contribution to the Paris Agreement. But operational barriers do exist when we are moving from policy to implementation. Climateworks' latest report, Turning the Tide, which was released last week, outlines the practical recommendations to overcome these barriers and help Indonesia move from policy ambition to measurable results. Over the next hour, you will hear from Climateworks experts who wrote that report, taking us through the 3 pillars essential to realizing Indonesia's ocean climate ambition. First up, Dr. Carolina Contreras. She will take us through the importance of governance, followed by Brurce Mecca, who will discuss blue finance and investment frameworks. And finally, Wiraditma Prananta will speak about regional cooperation in Southeast Asia through Indonesia's leadership role in ASEAN. We will be taking your questions at the end, so please keep them coming through the Q&A section on your screen. Let's kick off with our first speaker. Dr. Carolina Contreras is a senior analyst at Climateworks. Carolina applies a social environmental lens to studying ocean and seascapes, advancing research on ocean governance and coastal livelihoods. Over to you, Carolina.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to join you today and share some of the reflections on Indonesia's ocean economy from a governance perspective. In line with recent developments, the strategic inclusion of the ocean in climate highlights the need to further reflect on the governance arrangements that ocean economies like Indonesia may require in the coming decades. However, translating ocean ambition into practice does require tangible action across science, governance, as well as the practices across sectors and institutions. To date, ocean action across these key areas remain fragmented and uneven. But these are fixable gaps in a system that is already in motion. Thus, understanding and addressing these governance gaps is key. In 2024, just about a year ago, Climateworks consulted with key Indonesian practitioners and experts to identify and assess those gaps in practice across blue ecosystems. The findings directed our attention to key opportunities. One of these opportunities was concerned with blue nature-based solutions and the role in Indonesia's climate commitments. Despite that there is a growing momentum in the implementation of such solutions, they continue to lag behind efforts that are being done on land. However, blue nature-based solutions offer key environmental benefits, and they do create a powerful framework for transforming governance and policy with impacts on the wider coastal communities. By promoting a shift in mindsets, behaviors, and practices, blue nature-based solutions have the potential to directly influence national planning, also reshape work practices, as well as introducing new tools for methodologies, guidelines across ocean-based industries with multiplying impacts. For Indonesia, blue nature-based solutions can play a key role, without a doubt, to enable the ocean climate ambition to be put into practice. A second opportunity is concerned with key operational fixes to unlock the potential of Indonesia's blue ecosystem. The urgent need to enhance governance mechanisms for ocean climate action offers an opportunity to address existing gaps in ocean and also in their data collection as well as valuation methodologies. This presents a valuable opportunity for Indonesia to advance its ongoing efforts in developing its national ocean accounts. In the case of Indonesia's ocean accounting, it can play a vital role in facilitating an informed decision-making process that takes into account the biophysical characteristics of ecosystems as well as their uses, dependencies, and actively incorporating the social dimension into governance. The latter will be key to ensure a sustainable ocean economy that addresses climate, but also addresses biodiversity and sustainable livelihoods goals. These efforts appear highly dependent on the formulation of a responsive normative, sound, robust, and accessible data systems, as well as relevant and sustainable finance opportunities to support ocean policy in practice. With these reflections in mind, the question that remains is, what is needed in ocean governance? And one of the key next steps is to work toward an ocean governance that connects policy, science, and livelihoods, one that can support Indonesia's climate ambition toward tangible action. Climateworks 2024 consultations with blue carbon experts highlighted the need for governance arrangements that reflect this interdependence between ecosystems, biodiversity, and coastal communities. In this context, marine spatial planning, supported by ocean accounting as well as local knowledge, can form the operational backbone of this effort. Second, another step that will be fundamental is to build a unified ocean data system to turn knowledge into action, an action that can definitely start with ocean accounting efforts. Enhancing these data systems is essential to support a transition from problem identification to policy development and then implementation. Moreover, establishing a robust data framework for the ocean will be crucial for scaling efforts and ensuring an effective management of marine resources over time. Lastly, Indonesia can take the lead in implementing international agreements and shaping regional ocean governance. Indonesia's recent ratification of the High Seas Treaty marks a significant milestone in marine governance, joining other countries in the commitment to protect biodiversity in international waters beyond national jurisdiction. Second, advancing a proactive approach to global aspirations can create opportunities for regional leadership. This, in turn, can catalyze broader commitments from other nations. This is but one example of the importance of international agreements and their multiplying impact on ocean-based industries, such as sustainable fisheries, marine tourism, as well as their role in shaping ocean governance in the making. To date, global ocean governance has lagged behind climate ambition, leaving a critical gap in how marine issues are integrated into national climate strategies. The evolving global landscape presents Indonesia with both the responsibility as well as the opportunity to turn international commitments into actionable national strategies with global impact. Overall, ocean governance will mark the way ocean economies unfold in the next decade, and Indonesia holds the potential to lead this effort. I will leave you now with this reflection. Thank you for your attention today. I will now hand back to Etwin.
Thank you, Carolina, for sharing how Indonesia has shown leadership in building governance. and also sharing some practical steps for turning ocean climate goals into action through governance that recognizes how ecosystems, biodiversity, and people are all connected. You also show how robust data frameworks are an important step in scaling efforts. Now, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Brurce Mecca. Brurce is a senior analyst at Climateworks, leading work on mobilizing climate finance in Indonesia. His work focuses on enabling environments and credible investment strategy for a net zero future. Over to you, Brurce.
Thank you, Etwin, and hi everyone. My name is Brurce Mecca, and I will present about the role of finance in blue economy, specifically how to nurture the enabling environment to mobilize finance towards Indonesia's sustainable ocean economy. I will start with explaining to you where we are at and then how to strategize and reflect on the benefits we will get from better mobilization of sustainable blue finance. So Indonesia's ocean climate agenda is ambitious, but one of its most persistent operational gaps is finance. Funding streams for ocean-based climate initiatives do exist, both domestically and globally, but they remain fragmented, sporadic, and poorly aligned with Indonesia's national priorities, especially the NDC. A core issue is that we still lack a unified framework that defines and guides what counts as sustainable ocean investment. As a result, key mitigation and adaptation opportunities, including mangrove restoration, seagrass protection, coastal resilience, maritime decarbonization, are not fully recognized in mainstream financial planning. Financiers remain unsure about risk profiles, eligibility, and long-term economic value. Policy tools such as the Indonesian Taxonomy for Sustainable Finance, known as TKBI, can potentially change this. A sustainable finance taxonomy is a classification system that defines economic activities that are considered environmentally and socially sustainable. So, as Indonesia's policy tool for screening sustainable finance, the Indonesian Sustainable Finance Taxonomy, or TKBI, can send a strong signal to capital markets and help align financial flows with the country's climate and economic goals, including blue carbon and the broader blue economy framework. So how do we nurture the collective efforts to enable sustainable blue finance? There are three key steps. First, Indonesia's financial ecosystem can formally recognize the full potential of the blue economy. Integrating blue sectors into the Indonesian Sustainable Finance Taxonomy is a powerful step because it clarifies what qualifies as sustainable blue investment and creates alignment between finance, climate targets, and the national development priorities. Second, we need to build sector-specific systems and technical capacity. This gives financiers the tools to assess risk, evaluate bankability, and invest confidently in the blue sectors. When these systems exist, blue finance evolves from a niche concept into a mainstream investment class. The third action is sustainable blue finance can be tied to clear governance reforms. If capital flows are backed by credible data, transparent ocean accounting, or a holistic tool to measure the ocean's health and economic value, marine spatial planning, and other measurable outcomes, then financial institutions can better identify, value, and further de-risk blue investments. And finally, I would like to remind you that directing finance into blue sectors can generate multiple dividends. Sustainable fisheries strengthen food system, ecotourism creates low carbon jobs, Healthy ecosystems protect natural carbon sinks, and decarbonized maritime industries can boost global competitiveness. And as a closing notes, the financial system needs to become more familiar with what makes a blue project truly sustainable. To this end, embedding clear, credible criteria in the Indonesian Sustainable Finance Taxonomy, or TKBI, is the first major step towards greater recognitions, the first step towards generating a robust pipeline of sustainable blue investment. But this must be followed by alignment with reliable data, clear policies, and measurable outcomes to ensure that investment really translates into real ocean climate impact. So thank you everyone for your attention, and I hand back over to Etwin.
Thank you, Brurce. It's interesting how finance can unlock Indonesia's blue economy. From integrating blue sectors into the sustainable finance taxonomy to building capacity and aligning investments with clear data and governance. If you have just joined us, welcome to the Climateworks Centre's briefing room, where we're talking about how Indonesia can turn its blue economy into a driver of sustainable growth and climate resilience. I'm Etwin Sabarini, the Program Impact Manager for Climateworks Ocean Program. And we've just heard from Dr. Carolina Contreras and Brurce Mecca outlining the practical recommendations across governance and finance. I'm delighted to introduce our third and final speaker, Wiraditma Prananta. Wira supports Climateworks research on ocean-based mitigation. He engages with decision makers and builds partnerships with governments and stakeholders across Southeast Asia. Over to you, Wira.
Thank you very much, Edwin. After hearing the opportunities from the governance and financial sectors, let me further add on the regional opportunity for Indonesia's leadership in Southeast Asia. First, let me begin by framing why Southeast Asia plays a crucial role in the global ocean climate agenda. The ocean sits at the center of Southeast Asia's economic and security landscape. About 1/3 of the global shipping passes through this region, making it one of the world's most important maritime corridor. In 2024, ASEAN's trade in ocean-based goods reached nearly $120 billion, underscoring how deeply the region's economy depends on healthy and secure coastal waters. Beyond this strategic importance, Southeast Asia is home to some of the world's largest and most biodiverse blue carbon ecosystems, especially mangroves and seagrasses. These ecosystems are concentrated in the Western Coral Triangle, the Sunda Shelves, and the Andaman Coast. Collectively, the region contains around 5 million hectares of mangroves and 3 million hectares of seagrass ecosystem. If these ecosystems are conserved, restored, and embedded into climate policy, they could offer significant mitigation potential, averaging 6.5 tons of carbon per hectare. So, several countries are beginning to recognize the ocean within their climate ambitions, though their level of integration varies. Starting with Indonesia, the second NDC, which was just launched recently in October, adopts a landscape-scale approach that covers terrestrial, coastal, and marine ecosystems. Indonesia also commits to advancing sustainable marine space use for blue carbon reserves through marine spatial planning. Next, Malaysia. It has developed a blue economy blueprint and currently drafting a national climate change bill, while the Philippines recognizes the ocean energy and blue carbon in its nationally determined contributions, or NDC, and is currently exploring sustainable finance instruments, including blue bonds, to finance its climate actions. Last but not least, Vietnam integrates offshore wind in its renewable energy strategy and accounts for mangrove carbon within the land use change, and forestry sectors. These developments signal growing awareness across the region, but they also show the stronger cooperation still needed. At the regional level, ASEAN has laid several important policy foundations. First, the ASEAN Leaders Declaration on the Blue Economy, which was adopted in 2021. It reflects high-level political commitment to developing a coherent regional blue economy agenda. The next ASEAN Blue Economy Framework, adopted in 2023, provides guidance for sustainable ocean use and explicitly incorporates blue conservation management, which creates a pathway for integrating blue carbon into regional actions. And finally, the ASEAN Strategy on Carbon Neutrality, also adopted in 2023, aims to support an inclusive and regionally coherent shift to a low-carbon development model. So, as energy demand in Southeast Asia is expected to reach 1,100 million tons of oil equivalent by 2050, the region needs to accelerate its shift towards green and renewable energy sources. Ocean-based renewables, particularly offshore wind, tidal, and wave, can play a significant role in reducing reliance on fossil fuel. Additionally, green shipping is another important pathway. For example, here, Singapore-Australia Green and Digital Shipping Corridor, which was just launched last year, illustrates how coordinated green fuel and digital shipping corridor, green fuel, supply chains, standardized bunkering, and digital optimization can decarbonize major roads. So, our takeaway here, if major Indonesian ports adopt similar approach, they could collectively reduce emission by up to 2.8 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year by 2030. This shows the combined potential energy cooperation and maritime decarbonization in the region. Next, we see, as shown in this figure, new and renewable energy such as hydropower, solar photovoltaic, offshore wind, biofuels, and geothermal could make up to 37% of ASEAN's installed capacity by 2050. Here, the ocean-based renewables are a critical part of the shifts. As indicated in the light blue in the figure presented, it is projected that the offshore wind to triple, reaching 6.7% by 2050. Collectively, these resources could support ASEAN countries in meeting rising energy demand while also advancing their long-term decarbonization commitment. So, Indonesia has a pivotal role to play. Under its ASEAN chairpersonship in 2023, the region, for the first time, recognized explicitly the importance of integrating ocean-based climate actions into NDCs, long-term strategies, and adaptation communications. Indonesia also oversaw the adoption of the ASEAN Strategy on Carbon Neutrality and ASEAN Blue Economy Framework during its leadership. However, these frameworks currently do not set region-wide measurable targets for ocean-based mitigations. This gap presents a major opportunity, particularly for Indonesia's leadership. Indonesia here is well positioned to address this gap, with the largest blue carbon ecosystems in the region. Indonesia can demonstrate how blue carbon solutions deliver both emission reductions and socio-economic resilience. By advancing coordinated marine spatial planning, strengthening cross-border energy infrastructure, and promoting knowledge sharing, Indonesia can help shape and anchor Southeast Asia's collective pathway toward net zero emission by 2050. So, our closing message here that Indonesia's leadership within ASEAN provides a powerful platform to advance blue carbon economy, aligning regional efforts on blue carbon protection, maritime decarbonization, offshore renewables, and regional green shipping. By driving a coherent ocean climate strategy at both national and regional levels, Indonesia can help shape Southeast Asia's collective path toward a low-carbon, prosperous, and resilient future. I thank you, and back to you, Etwin.
Thank you, Ira. Thank you so much for taking us through the progress being made in ASEAN member states and how greater collaboration in cross-border ocean renewable energy and green shipping can have positive climate outcomes. So we've heard from our experts how Indonesia could balance achieving its economic targets as well as achieving climate ambition and how ocean contributes to these goals. We're now going to open the floor to questions from my audience. If you have a question you'd like to ask to our speakers, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I'll start the discussion by asking a question to all our panelists, and maybe we can hear from you first, Carolina. So COP30 has just wrapped up in Belém, Brazil. Were there any outcomes from this year's COP that will further progress this work?
Thank you, Etwin, for the question. So there are three main components to COP30, although there are still a few things left unsaid. We can highlight a couple of opportunities. So the ocean was elevated, at least in discourse, to the same level of importance as far as in their role in climate action. Another one was the Blue Package, or also referred as Blue Collective Task, the Blue Mutirão, that highlights all of the actions that are needed by 2028 in our road to 2030, highlighting a couple of topics in terms of conservation, shipping, offshore renewables, tourism, as well as food. And the third one is the newly created Ocean Task Force, which Indonesia also joined. This task force of countries, about 11, under the leadership of France and Brazil, will be very much concerned with implementing all of the blue components from the NDCs into national strategies. Over to you, Etwin.
Thank you, Carolina. I'd like now to ask Brurce, do you see any outcomes that relates to finance or investments?
Yeah, thank you, Etwin. So at COP30, one of the clear signals on finance was the increased pressure on countries to scale up both public and private capital flows for climate action, especially as negotiations on the new collective quantified goal, or mostly known as NCQG, enter the new final stretch. So the discussion on that emphasized not only increasing the volume of finance, but also improving its alignment with national priorities, transparency, and access, which is highly relevant for emerging economies such as Indonesia, actually. So importantly for ocean climate topic, COP30 in Belém saw stronger recognition of blue carbon and ocean-based mitigation within global finance frameworks, including calls to integrate coastal ecosystems into national finance strategies and also climate investment plans. So while the final text stops short of major breakthrough, I believe it still reinforces the need for countries to develop investment-ready pipelines in areas such as mangrove, seagrass, resilient fisheries, and sustainable coastal infrastructure. So these are the areas where Indonesia can lead, provided there is coordinated policy, governance, and also financial ecosystem support.
Okay, Wira, now to you. Any regional opportunities that arise from Belém?
Thank you so much, Edwin. I think there were three takeaways for the regional activities that we can highlight from the COP30 in Belém. The first, I think the most interesting news that ASEAN for the first time opened its designation pavilion at the UNFCCC COP. This is a good news because they are aimed to showcase ASEAN's collective actions in accelerating the energy transition, enhancing climate finance, mobilizing private sector participation, scaling net-to-base solution, and advancing just transition approach. While also ASEAN regularly issue their joint statement on climate change. Here they also highlights and urge all the Southeast Asian countries and all UNFCCC parties to prioritize ocean-based and nature-based and community-led ecosystem in their national climate goals. And last but not least, this is also an interesting news that Malaysia, as the current chair in 2025 of ASEAN, called for a formation of ASEAN negotiation bloc. They want to call it as Southeast Asia Alliance for Negotiation Bloc under the UNFCCC framework, to provide ASEAN with a dedicated platform for coordinated climate negotiation, including climate financing, carbon market, and decarbonization. Thank you, and back to you, Edwin.
Thank you, Wira. We have a question here from Ririndia at Pangkalan Bun. I'd like to ask this to Wira. How do we calculate the blue carbon potential in our region?
Well, thank you for the questions. Unfortunately, as of now, there is no single framework or reference yet for ASEAN to calculate their blue carbon potentials. The frameworks that we have mentioned earlier, such as the ASEAN Blue Economy Framework and also ASEAN Strategy for Carbon Neutrality, only provides an umbrella for the regional policy level. While this, in our report, we conducted a desk study to collect information from the government report, academic journal, and work by think tanks or CSOs. But there is no such a single reference yet for the accounting of blue carbon and blue carbon potentials. So this is the opportunity for Indonesia to share the information and lead the region to develop a common method to calculate blue carbon potentials, I think.
Great. So another question I've received from Anissa in Jakarta, and I think this most relates to Carolina and Brurce. How significant will blue carbon sector for Indonesia to achieve its second NDC? I think maybe Carolina, you can go first.
Thank you, Etwin. So I will touch on the social dimensions of blue carbon ecosystems within the second NDC. So of course, we have all of the emissions that could be mitigated, but the multiplying effect or the multiplying impact of such actions will reach a number of industries and beyond, including coastal communities. So the benefits coming from all of these actions that are of this ambition contained in the second NDC can fit into ongoing efforts with coastal communities in terms of capacity building, in terms of resilience, as well as increasingly drawing the transition across different industries, including fisheries in this case. But of course, the challenge now is to ensure that Indonesia can translate this potential into investment-ready projects. And this can be done through credible science, informed policy decision-making, and a stronger alignment between the public and private finance.
Brurce, what's your take on this?
Thank you, Etwin, and thank you, Carolina. I'll follow up on that. I think focusing on the climate mitigation goal itself, looking at the second NDC, blue carbon will be one of Indonesia's most strategically important levers to meet its climate mitigation goals. I think it is also parallel with our Climateworks analysis that shows that protecting and restoring mangrove ecosystem and seagrass ecosystem alone could deliver equivalently up to 28% of Indonesia's climate mitigation gap by 2050. This is a significant number if done correctly, and makes blue carbon not just a niche intervention, but rather a core pillar of Indonesia's long-term transition, especially as land-based mitigation options become increasingly constrained. Thank you, Etwin. Back to you.
It is very significant. I would agree with you. We've received also a question from Melbourne, this time from Megan, who asked if there are opportunities for innovation where Australia and Indonesia could collaborate. Maybe Wira, you have any insight on this one?
Well, thank you very much, Erin. So I think being Australia's in the position of the president of negotiations until the COP31 until next year would bring us such a great opportunity for Australia and Indonesia to cooperate further, particularly with Indonesia tries to champion the ocean-based mitigation, and also Australia, along with the Pacific countries, try to include element of oceans, to raise awareness about the ocean would be such an opportunity for both countries, even in the region between Australia, Indonesia, the Pacific, or even Southeast Asia, to cooperate further to advance ocean-based mitigation. Also to share information about the methodology, technology, about the calculations on blue carbon, etc. Also, I think this is also a good opportunity for Australia and Indonesia to move beyond the currently available, such as just energy transitions. That would be a good opportunity.
Thank you, Ira. I think I'd like to know also from Carolina, do you see if there's any other opportunities for this collaboration between Australia and Indonesia?
Absolutely, and drawing from Wira's point, there's already ongoing collaboration between experts, and this can be further enhanced through being part as well of these ocean task force, where the two countries will be more constantly interacting as well and sharing about science, continuing the work. Australia and Indonesia are one of the top, more prolific in terms of knowledge production in blue carbon ecosystems. So definitely room for collaboration there as well.
Thanks, Carolina. I've also received a question about the finance taxonomy. I'll give this one to Brurce. How do you see the inclusion of blue economy in the Indonesian sustainable finance taxonomy help mobilize real sustainable investments and ultimately contribute to climate action?
Thank you, Etwin. So the idea of integrating blue economy into Indonesia's sustainable finance taxonomy is actually a powerful way to unlock real sustainable investment, because this gives financial institution, at least in Indonesia and maybe the region, something they have long lacked, which is a clear, credible guidance on what constitute sustainable blue activities actually are. So when banks, investors, and regulators share a common definition and screening criteria, it reduces uncertainty around financial risk, business eligibility, and the long-term economic and financial return. So this makes it easier for capital to flow into sectors such as coastal restoration, sustainable fisheries, green ports, and resilient coastal infrastructure, for example. So the taxonomy can also align financial decision-making with national priorities, such as, for example, the NDC and the Blue Economy Roadmap, ensuring that investment is not only green on paper, but also delivers measurable climate and ocean outcomes. So I think in short, once blue sectors are formally recognized in the sustainable finance taxonomy, then Indonesia can really start building a pipeline of investable, bankable blue projects that contribute directly to mitigation, adaptation, and coastal resilience outcome. I hope that answered it. Thank you, Etwin.
Thank you, Ira. I think we have maybe a few more minutes. I'll ask a question to all of you. If you had to pick one action or step that you think could have the biggest positive effect for Indonesia's blue economy, as well as climate action, what would it be? I'll have Wira go first this time.
Thank you. Well, I think mainstreaming the ocean agenda into climate action would be something that we need for Indonesia, because it means that we try to mainstream that ocean is as just important as terrestrial ecosystems, As highlighted in the report as well, doing so will deliver a double dividend, which benefit both economy and climate. Also, mainstreaming oceans, I think, requires an inclusive approach that meaningfully involves coastal customary communities, including fisher folk, in the decision-making process, such as when we want to talk about blue carbon project, when we talk about adaptation or mitigation, we will involve them as well. So this is a holistic approach that we try to mainstream ocean in every layer of the policy itself.
Thank you, Wira. Brurce, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Well, choosing one is really hard, but if I really had to pick one actions that could have the biggest positive effect for Indonesia's blue economy and climate action, it would be establishing a national blue carbon incubator. So basically, this incubator could connect sustainable finance with real community-based business pipelines, which can include blue carbon restoration, resilient fisheries, and also ecotourism. All of those are important marine-based industries in Indonesia. So why incubator is important? Because by helping local actors directly to develop bankable projects, bankable businesses, and linking them directly to public and private capital that have different risk appetites, then Indonesia can finally accelerate ocean solutions into investable opportunities that deliver climate impacts while also directly improving coastal livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolina, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's also hard to just pick one, but definitely I will go aspirational. So first, enhancing the protection of marine protected areas nationally, but definitely pushing forward the idea of international, we can achieve our 2030 goals and ensure the integrity of the ocean health. So that would be one next step.
Okay, thank you. I have a question here from Eva that she asked, I want to ask about relationship among the ministries, how to optimize stakeholder efforts based on their authorities to improve governance and reduce misalignments. Any volunteer from the panel? Maybe Brurce, Wira?
I can try actually. So I think so it's a very good question. Thank you. One thing I would do first is do our internal research and due diligence first, because in order to know relationship between ministries and even between them and local government, it's important to know legally speaking what their mandates are, what they are able and not able to do, and then after that cross-match that with testimony, I think, from partners that have worked with them, because I think legality is one thing and practical implementation is another. So internal due diligence is needed for us to really able to map relationships and nodes of network among ministries and government authorities, because they are not monolithic. So upon knowing that, basically reaching out to individual ministries or local government institution is important to build individual relationship, building trust, and then really clarify what has been misaligned between these different institutions, and then figure out, facilitate how to better align them and in a way that's productive and cooperative and without too much imposing ourselves on them, and basically without telling them what to do, and helping them to by asking better questions and think for themselves.
Thank you, Brurce. We have time for one more question, and I think it relates most to Wira for this one. How will the prospect of blue carbon be part of carbon economy to serve domestic, regional, and international interests in climate mitigation and action and adaptation? So how will the prospect of blue carbon be part of carbon economy to serve domestic, regional, and international interests in climate mitigation and adaptation?
All right, thank you very much. And that's an interesting question indeed. First thing, I think we have to understand the baseline itself that blue carbon, as we argued earlier in the very beginning, is part of the economic agenda as well. That blue carbon and also will bring prosperity in the context of like Indonesia or even like Southeast Asia. It is attached to most of the economic engines of the region and the national level, such as we talk about the green, we talk about the maritime transportation. We talk about the blue carbon ecosystems. We talk about the energy that could replace the fossil fuels and etc. So the idea is like to embed it into the sustainable development agenda that every country has. This is pretty much aligned, that we are moving forward, like growing the economy while also moving to the future with in a sustainable way. I think that's a key part that align with the interests of every single country, even like it is also aligned with regional and international interests.
Yes, couldn't agree with you more on that. So that brings us to the end of our discussion. Thank you so much to our panels, Carolina, Brurce, and Wira, and our production team behind the scene, Simon, Arwen, and also Tyra. Climateworks is a philanthropical funded organization, and none of this work would be possible without the generous support of our funders. We extend our heartfelt appreciation to the funders of the CFORM program, warmly welcome new partners to join us in bridging the gap between research and action to advance ocean-based climate mitigation in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. We will send through a recording from this session as well as the resources discussed today, so keep an eye on your inbox. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next year when we kick off our briefing room series for 2026. Thank you.